All right, we'll skip to Elisa.
Hi, I'm Elisa Fernandez, and I am a current MLIS student at San Jose State and working on the project with all these wonderful people. Happy
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you. And Margie, yours. So Margie is joining us all the way from Hawaii. And so maybe there are some technical difficulties there. So anyway, thank you very much. And you can also see at the footer there, our partners, so the funding institution, Institute Museum of Library Services, IMLS, and also a very important strategic partner, Little Free Library as well. I'm also on the board of that organization. All right, so the agenda. Sophia, you're on mute, of course.
Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, just one moment here. Today we're going to go over the project overview. We're going to go over the goals of the project, the lessons learned, a literature review, results, and Q&A.
Great, thank you, Sophia.
Come.
All right, project overview. So this project is an implementation grant, national leadership grant from IMLS, and it was based on a 1-year IMLS planning grant with the Blackfeet in Montana. So it ended up being a $1.4 million implementation grant with 5 tribes across 4 states. I must say that one of the primary findings for the planning grant was, of course, trying to study the barriers for Blackfeet children and families. And so we, halfway through that project, started to implement a few things that we thought might knock down some of those barriers. And that's where that relationship with the Little Free Libraries began. And we'll explain that more in just a second. As far as our partners, so 5 tribes across 4 states. We have the Yurok tribe in California, the Northern Cheyenne tribe of Montana, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, and the Santo Domingo Pueblo of New Mexico. 2 national organizations that really are part of our strategic building of book ecosystems, Head Start and Little Free Library. And essentially we have 3 Little Free Libraries placed strategically in our 5 partnerships, which we'll talk about in a second. We call them the 3 legs of the stool: Head Start, School Library, and Public Tribal Library, really with the focus primarily on that 0 to 10 age group, kind of that literacy by 3rd grade milestone. And 100% of our donations go through to the Little Free Libraries, and we'll explain that as well in just a second. And as of last month, we're proud to say 5,375 plus books have been disseminated across the 5 tribes, as well as a 6th tribe, which was the Crow in Montana, who had to pull out due to a change in leadership at their elementary school. So, right, Leah.
So as mentioned, we're working with five tribes across 4 states in North Carolina, Montana, New Mexico, and California. This map includes our partners and Little Free Library placements for all of the tribes, which are predominantly located in front of the schools, elementary schools, Head Starts, and libraries within each community.
Thank you, Leah. And again, you'll see two in Montana, both the Crow and the Northern Cheyenne. So the Crows still have their Little Free Libraries up, and hopefully continuing to put books into those Little Free Libraries. All right, so in terms of literature, so this study largely is based on the famous Hernandez-Casey Foundation study that really identified that 3rd grade as a milestone. And although it's not a hard and fast rule, they basically found that by 3rd grade, if you're not reading equivalent, it gets much more difficult for that student.
We're not seeing the slides, by the way.
You're not? Oh,
No.
I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Thank you for sharing that. So the National Indian Educational Study was done by the federal government, really looking at 4th and, can you see it okay?
You need to scoot it over because we're seeing half the screen now. scoot your slide. There you go, a little further. Yes, perfect.
Better? Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. But basically looked at American Indian students at the 4th grade and 8th grade level. And one of the things that they found is that for high performing readers, that there were 3 primary correlational variables attached that separated high performing and low performing readers. And that was a school library with materials about their culture in that school library, 25 books or more at home, and also a computer at home. And so we are focusing on 2 of those 3 variables in this study. Building a love of reading, which we'll talk more about in just a second, but really the idea before they go beyond 3rd grade, that they have really established that love of reading as opposed to being forced to read for educational purposes. Usability, so that's one of my areas of expertise. Utility and ease of use really drives usage of anything, any system. And so the intent here was to provide brand new books in easily convenient ways, which is why we place them at Head Start and the elementary school. So to knock down several of those barriers of both cost and time and access to libraries. And then the gap. So this is the gap between 4th grade reading scores between the country and American Indian, also Alaskan Native 4th graders. So you can see in 2000, kind of actually at that point, the American Indian 4th graders actually scored 1 point higher than the national average. But then you can see that precipitous drop, and then that gap that as of the release creation of this chart was 16 points between American Indian 4th graders and the rest of the country. So project goals, Leah?
There are 4 specific goals the project is hoping to achieve. The first is to increase access to literacy for children and families. We're achieving this in several ways, including the building of little free libraries in the key locations within our partner communities and filling them with books curated by the librarians. Creating fun ways for children to engage with reading by holding parties for finishing reading logs, and by giving children take-home library boxes filled with books to start their home collections. Secondly, we are aiming to increase the use and relevance of libraries through grant funding, going towards library program that connects with the tribal populations, developed in collaboration with the communities and their librarians, and through the partnerships the libraries are building with the Head Starts and elementary schools. Thirdly, we want to increase reading at home by providing age-appropriate and culturally relevant books in the little free libraries for children to choose and take home to keep or share. Our librarian-led reading log programs also encourage reading at home with parents and caregivers to help foster a love of reading together within the families. And all of these initiatives have been developed with tribal leadership, our partners, librarians, and insights gleaned from the community focus groups and surveys, and carried out by public school and community librarians and their Head Start programs.
So there's some pictures of some of our tribal partners. So methodology, so we start with the community assessment, and we've had varying success as far as the overall sample, but really the intent is to understand what the priorities of the tribe are first in the community, because one of the priorities also is to provide more relevant library services in each community as well. So I've also had the privilege of visiting each site along with web-based surveys of parents in the community, really giving us a qualitative and quantitative data set as far as what the community wants from both reading and libraries. You can see also focus groups and interviews. So again, kind of a mixed method approach, but certainly a community-centered, community-driven approach to understanding how to implement this project. And probably most importantly is this community partnership. So one of the things that we found with our project is that really, while one could easily think of a tribe or a city or a county as one ubiquitous unit, certainly we're finding that our project really brings people together within each community that is, of course, interested in literacy and education for the same population. So building those partnerships and networks and kind of serving as a catalyst is definitely one of the important outputs and outcomes of this project. All right, so one of the analogies and metaphors we like to use is kind of this is why we're called Reading Nation Waterfall. So you can see here a picture of Running Eagles Falls and Two Medicine Glacier National Park, one of the prettiest places I've ever had the privilege of visiting. And that picture there is Running Eagle Falls as a confluence of three different rivers that come into one, and really, I think, beautiful analogy and what we're trying to emulate here. And so the intent is building these book ecosystems, right? And so certainly we're a funded grant, but really our goal is to build these ecosystems and go from a few books, a drop, to a trickle, to a roaring waterfall. And that's really kind of the focus. And so again, you've got three partners, the three legs of the stool, Head Start, School Library, Public Library of Children, of course, in the middle. We place strategically little free libraries in each of them, and we load them down with brand new books. The good news too is that we have built some community partnerships, not only Little Free Library, but the Kiwanis Club and the Rotary. And so that is not necessarily strategically expected, but the Kiwanis Club has adopted and sponsored the Little Free Libraries for the Santo Domingo Pueblo, and also likely do the same thing for the Eastern Band as well. So certainly extending our budget and bringing those community partnerships is highly coveted. And again, the whole thing is a book ecosystem focused on book sharing and inserting books into that ecosystem so that children, regardless of socioeconomic status, have access to high quality books on demand. So. All right, with that being said, I understand that we want to have a couple of conversations. And so we've had some good questions that were sent to us before, but I'm going to hold here and check in with Manisha. Did you want us just to explore these questions or just take questions from the floor? And I apologize, I haven't been paying attention to my chat either. So.
We'll ask participants if they would like to unmute and ask questions.
Okay, great. So we'd be happy to take any questions from the floor. And I apologize for some of the technical difficulties. I guess it's always to be expected in a Zoom meeting, but it's really, again, a privilege to be able to present to you today.
Since nobody is raising their hand, Leslie, go ahead.
Since these
Good
were
to see you, Leslie.
sent, yeah, I'm okay. Since these were sent, why don't we discuss these there? To start out with.
Great. Yes. And I also want to recognize Leslie Farmer, Dr. Farmer, she is one of our reading consultants who is helping us build, and we were just getting started again, Leslie, but to build and study how to increase reading at home. And so, Leslie, we have to get back into that. We're just kind of finalizing all of our contractual challenges. And so you'll be hearing from us shortly, but good to see you. All right, so let's talk about the questions. The first question is, this seems like a very positive and community-focused project. Was there any pushback or lack of interest from your families and schools that you partnered with? If so, how did you work through that? I would say yes. I would say that what we've discovered is that the communication between Head Start and the public tribal library and the school libraries really weren't very strong when we started. So we just had a meeting today where we really, because of this project, brought those three together to the table. And we kind of found that by having funding to actually allocate to this shared effort, really, I think has brought people together. So pushback, no. I don't think we really received a whole lot of pushback. I think certainly the kind of the negative connotations between reading and a lot of the very negative things that have happened in the past with boarding schools and you know, kind of the focus on colonialism certainly is there. But I think that ultimately when we talk about children, and in particular kind of that targeted third grade or younger, I think the barriers melt away. Because I think one of the things that we all can agree on is that reading is important for children in their future. And by the way, that was certainly one of the findings that we consistently received from all the communities, that indeed reading is recognized as important, and reading is recognized as a very important skill for the future success of their children. So that's kind of a unilateral finding that we had. So I think that the last thing I'd say there is that certainly everybody's busy, right? And so I think bringing people together for this project has been a challenge at times because everybody is busy. And I think there also is some level of lack of funding in some of the strategic areas, including the school libraries and the school librarians, which we probably will talk about in a little bit. So question 2. What kind of institutional barriers have you run into trying to set up library and book networks between the tribes? Do these networks have a role in efforts to revitalize indigenous languages? I think it's yes and yes. In terms of institutional barriers, I think we've talked about that a little bit. I do think that ultimately, again, you invest in what's important to you. And I think, so the Yurok tribe, for example, that they don't even have a public library. And so I think that the relationship between the consistent finding that everybody agrees reading is important, and the resources and the systems that we're finding are not well aligned at times. That includes not offering full-time funding for school librarians. That includes the collections at school libraries, and that also includes the salaries for school librarians in particular. So yes, there are definitely some institutional barriers when you think about Head Start, school library, and tribal public library. All three of them come from different funding agencies, and so oftentimes I think there is that's a natural barrier. So. But I'll end with this, that the community, again, almost unanimously felt that the tribes and the tribal administration should put more resources into ensuring that their children, in particular parents, have access to high quality reading material, and certainly other library services. In terms of indigenous languages, so again, to all 5 tribes, all 6 tribes, the indigenous language is really mostly a second language, where English tends to be the first language. And in fact, we are on a separate project focusing on indigenous languages and the preservation of those languages. But in terms of kind of the revitalization, I do think certainly these networks have a strong role to play, because again, all of the research really demonstrates the fact that children, as they get older and that brain fully develops, it gets harder to learn new languages. So when we talk about kind of bilingual immersion, I do think there's a lot of potential to have English and the indigenous language be part of a child's experience as they grow. And again, kind of that third grade to the elementary school level, but a lot of resources and a lot of strategic partnerships and collaboration have to be there for that to happen. So, Leah?
Can I say something?
Yeah, please do.
So this project is not just about the books. We also have funding that goes towards programming for the libraries. And so, like Dr. Chow said earlier, we had a meeting with one of our partners, and they're planning to use the programming to do some storytellings with the Head Start kids to go to the library. The public tribal library will have a weekly story time with elders and people from the Cheyenne language. group and cultural center people to be paid for their time to tell stories to these kids. And so it's not exclusive. Programming is there also to help support cultural relevance and engaging the students in libraries.
Thank you, Leah. I appreciate that. I'm also seeing a couple of questions in the chat. So do you use a project management paradigm? Michelle, could you elaborate a little bit more on that as far as we certainly have a number of project managers. We certainly have a lot of different project management things in place. Could you help me with maybe a little bit more elaboration on that question?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm tuning in from Onion Lake Cree Nation here in Treaty 6 territory.
The beach, Michelle.
And I'm sorry I was late, but I'm not sure if you had covered this, but I was just sort of listening into listening for a paradigm like well, there is the PIMEO project management model that is used for change. I was just wondering if there was a certain approach framework that you used to think on the change process that took place.
Yeah, great question, Michelle. The answer is largely no. I think that we, and this goes to the second question, we're using what's called a logic model, which is really kind of an outcomes-based paradigm. I do think that, kind of a learning gap maybe is the less attention on kind of the community change process, and more kind of an obsessive fixation on addressing the barriers that were identified in our initial research. So I would say no and yes. We do have a project management evaluation outcome, a model called the logic model, but in terms of kind of community and change management, no, you're right. We do not have a specific paradigm focused on that. Leslie had talked about a book culture, then a reading culture, and Leslie, I think the answer is kind of identifying books as one of the primary barriers first. And certainly we want a strong reading culture too. So I think one of the reasons why, Leslie, we haven't engaged with you more is that we're just trying to get the initial part of the process and project implemented first, which is buying the books, getting the books, and then excuse me, then certainly looking at increasing the use of those books. All right, so I think let's.
There's in the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking at what tips for Native American families to create better readers in the home. So certainly that is a seminal question. I think that first and foremost is having the material to read together. And so in our initial findings of the Blackfeet Nation, and certainly what we're finding in our partners, is that while it's a priority for parents and educators alike, again, the presence and the accessibility of those books are more of a challenge. And what I mean by that is the cost, right? So books are expensive, and then also the location of a library that is well funded and highly used. So I would say that's first and foremost. And in terms of tips for creating better readers, I think several things. One, you must start early, and that's true for everybody. I think that the research is also finding that reading in particular is important in a lot of other ways. So the relationships between children and their caregivers, so the time spent on reading together. And I think the other is really connecting reading with areas of interest and things that children and parents and families find important. and are passionate about, but in particular for the children. So, whether it be oral or reading, if a child is into bees, then it's all about bees. If the child is into basketball, then it's all about basketball. But it's connecting reading and the desire to pursue information, regardless if it's oral or reading, with passion and wanting to know more about something, right? I think that, in my opinion, is one of the foundations of building a love of reading, is that relationship, right? So what we say in the field is you must learn to read before you can read to learn, right? And what we mean by that is that we don't want reading to be a chore. We don't want it to be something you must do, but rather something you want to do and can do because you want to turn that page. You want to learn more about something that you care to learn about, right? And I think we call it a superpower, because once you get to third grade, you either have it or you don't. And if you don't, it gets a lot harder because the homework comes, all the required reading comes. I've watched my children, all very strong readers, but by the time they got to middle school, they stopped reading for entertainment purposes because they had too much homework, right? So that's one of the reasons why I'm a big believer in that third grade level. As you get more further into academia, you don't have the time to read for pleasure, plus all the other social challenges. Let's see. Apologies, Miss. I had to step away. Will it be interesting to hear about how you acknowledge the importance of oral history traditions? Well, addressing gaps in English language literacy. So we do recognize the importance of oral history traditions in terms of it certainly being a very critical part of sharing information. However, when we look at reading, one, English tends to be the prime. That was one of the questions that we had: is English even the language we want people to be reading in? But we focused on reading specifically because of the scope of our project and, of course, how we're funded. So I think oral history traditions are certainly very important. But is not really the focus of our project specifically. But I do want you to know, Fong, that we're talking to the communities about whether this is the right approach or not. And what we've been given is that, yes, in fact, reading is very important to us in the future of our children. So we don't spend a lot of time, to be honest, on focusing on the oral history tradition, but we are community centered. So it's more about, what's important to you? Is reading important to you? How can we best help you and your children with reading? So
Could I?
Yes, please. Linda. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that I think one of the most important things about the project is trying to create the initiative in the home for the parents, uncles, aunts, anyone there, older siblings, to read with the children. And what we find is that when there's a sharing of the reading at home, then the oral storytelling becomes a part of it as well, because they're reading with the children at home to teach them a love of reading, to share the practice of reading, but then it's almost like it's a common thing for the oral story to become part of the whole experience between the parents and the children, or the grandparents and the children. So if you're working with one at home, which we are really trying to encourage by our reading sheets, our pizza parties, and they're being very successful. But as we're encouraging this, we're finding that, and some of the parents that are participating are coming back talking about programming in reference to the oral storytelling that they heard from the past with their own families.
Thank you, Lynette. Appreciate that. And a final question or comment. Leslie talks about oral literacy. so one of the things I want to kind of reaffirm to everyone is it's been very hard to implement this project. It's been very difficult to build those relationships. And so certainly I recognize the fact that oral literacy is important, but in terms of the scope of this project, I want everyone to understand that we are strategically trying to identify the barriers from our previous study, and our community assessments are reaffirming that the particular barriers that we're focused on, right? Not everything, but we're focused on is the access to books, libraries, and reading at home, right? And so and right now we're focused on just number one, and which is the reading, the access to books. The programming funding is starting to kick in. And again, I think Leslie, one of the reasons why we want Leslie as our expert is to help us certainly with those others as well. So I want to be the first one to say that we are far from perfect, and we definitely have lots of things that we need to work on. But I also am here to tell you with a degree of confidence, it's been very, very difficult to get where we are now, but I'm very happy with the team and the students and the support of all of our experts to just get where we are now, which is the Little Free Libraries implemented, and slowly but surely the books being purchased to build these book ecosystems. So all good questions. Let's keep going. We'll definitely entertain additional questions as well. Yeah, and wellness talks about I learned to enjoy reading by being read to at an early age. Yeah, and wellness. So as you know, if a child gets a book, they want that book read to them usually right away, right? And I can't tell you how many times during these book giveaways the children reach out to me to read, or they reach out to the parent right away in the hallway, right then, to be read to, right? And so that's why I'm so fixated, obsessed with getting books in the hands of children, right? All these other points are well taken, but I'm focused on just getting those books into the hands of children and creating that opportunity with the understanding that equity of access to high quality, brand new books about Indigenous culture, books that are written about by Native authors in those community for their children is the focus of our project. So, all right. So with that being said, and so strategies to work, and we do not have anything right now for question 3. Again, slightly beyond the scope of our project. However, certainly books in kind of bilanguage books, I think certainly are desirable, and something that hopefully we can insert into those book ecosystems as we move forward. Michelle, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask the reason why I was asking about the paradigm framework is because just I've been working as a language catalyst now for over 10 years, working with teachers, working with assessments, working with diagnostic assessments, creation of assessments, and all of that. Like reading and literacy has been my life for the past 10 years. And I really appreciate the intimate kind of concern that you have for our nation and our children. And I'm so thankful for that. And I just wanted to tell you that I am here to help if there is anything that I can help with the kind of the literature base that I come from. If there's anything I can offer in terms of paradigm and framework, because it's very important, I believe, in any change. When we're talking about change, you need a change paradigm. And like in places of business, you have them using different theories as well as paradigms, as you know, the Hoshin model was something that was adopted by Treaty 6 Saskatchewan Reeds people. And so the Hoshin model is a lot alike to a lot like the indigenous process philosophy that I preach. And, you know, I would love to, you know, have a chance to have these conversations at another time if you're
That'd be
open to
great.
that.
I would love that. Yeah,
Yeah. So I'll just include my email and I
please.
would love
Yeah.
to share. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do want to reiterate too that, like I said, we've worked with 6 different tribes, and it's been very difficult just doing what we're doing now. And so, but I think growing it, partnerships, Michelle, there's a partnership, I think, with Little Free Library. So I've just joined the board because of this project. And I have a very direct strategic focus here, which is that I would really envision Little Free Library and Head Start partnerships, you know, globally, and because of the access to books, right? And I think all of you hopefully will be happy to hear that we're talking the ALA with a kind of a more formal public partnership with Little Free Library and ALA. So that these boxes are put strategically in our communities, many of which will be sponsored by the public or school library, right? Again, working together to get these books easily accessible into the hands of children, right? So anyway, that's pretty much where the Little Free Library partnership came in. We felt that it's a physical way to get books into the hands of children. So when you think about Head Start, of course, we know that children and families are going to be going to Head Start. And by definition, those children are in the lower socioeconomic category, which means that they don't actually usually typically have access for books. And of course, oftentimes don't have the time or the kind of the tradition to go to libraries to get books, right? And so that's why we really worked with Little Free Library. They've been a very strong partner, and Little Free Library is a global phenomena with over 360,000 Little Free Library book sharing boxes nationally. And again, I think more and more you're going to see more and more partnerships. They have developed the Indigenous Library Program, which comes with a collection as well. And so that's also part of our project. And Sophia, Leah, we do want to make sure that all of our 15 Little Free Libraries are taking advantage of that as well. That comes with additional books and books specifically targeted for the Indigenous community. So let's definitely make sure that we have that as part of the book ecosystem. All right, so quickly, how can libraries best serve tribal communities? So this slide deck has been used for non-Indigenous librarians in particular, and so just wanted to touch on those really fast, and then we'll go really quickly into some of the tribes, and then have a final conversation, Q&A. So constant dialogue. So again, really the key is to understand the needs of the community. That's in general, but certainly for the Indigenous Native American communities. Obviously, all tribes are different, all communities are different. And so if libraries want to understand how best to serve tribal communities, you've got to talk to them, and you've got to understand what are their priorities, and not necessarily what libraries can do for the community, but rather what the community needs from the libraries. Community-centered design, again, inside and outside. So certainly having volunteers, cultural representation, values, artwork, et cetera, both outside and inside. So we always like to say, don't judge a book by its cover, but we all judge a book by its cover. Libraries are judged by how they look and how welcoming they look. So it starts from outside and inside, and certainly having librarians that look like the community they're trying to serve is also very important. Libraries really can serve, I believe, as the catalyst for literacy and kind of a way to bring people interested in literacy together for the sake of the children. And the reason for that is because libraries offer free services from cradle to grave. And the bottom line is that means that for the first 5 years before they ever get to school, libraries are there. And of course, libraries must be welcoming places that are relevant to members of all people. Creating literacy networks. So again, libraries really need to take a role to collect partners in their or your community to have a more strategic partnership. And I think Sophia and Leah saw that earlier today in our meeting with the Northern Cheyenne, where the different members of the community were talking to each other to partner to offer some of that. And I think although I had to leave that meeting before it ended, I have to say that I heard two things that just made me want to jump for joy. One, a free book fair for all the rising kindergartners from the Head Start program, and then another free book fair for all incoming kindergartners. And what we're talking about literally is giving children a bag where they can take 10, 15, 20 brand new books of their choosing, brand new. Right. And so I think you see the building of love of reading by allowing that autonomy to choose what they want to choose and bring it home. So books, program, resources, and services are outputs of all of this work. Again, how to make our libraries relevant? Well, we've got to make sure that we're offering what the community wants and needs. Also understanding that libraries can do a lot more than what a lot of people think libraries can and should do. And that's kind of the rolling evolution of libraries. And then certainly increasing relevance of libraries for Indigenous tribal children. So I've certainly noticed that there are a predominant number of non-Indigenous librarians in Indigenous Native American communities trying to serve the Indigenous and Native American community, which is just fine. However, there definitely needs to be a lot more work to make sure that we're not just trying to offer good or library services in a generic fashion, but it must be more customized to the needs of the community, which means that if we're not from that community, oftentimes we don't understand truly what the needs are because our world experience and perspectives are different. So, all right, quickly, lessons learned. I'm happy to say this is a picture with Chief Sneed of the Eastern Band. And because of our project, in a meeting with him and the head of library services, Adam Lambert, he asked a question. He goes, well, what if we, because he definitely resonated with the fact that, and again, it is subjective, but by third grade, you want to really put a lot of resources, front load a lot of resources in the children before they reach the third grade. And so he asked, well, what if I buy 25 books for all of my children under third grade? And both Adam and I looked at him and said, yes. The answer is yes. Buy books for all of your children, regardless of socioeconomic status and where they live. Yes, that would move the needle. And Eastern Band probably don't know, but they have one of the most successful casinos on the East Coast. And so they have a lot of resources. And that is a perfect example of really working with leadership within the tribal community to spark a more strategic focus on, yes, Chief Sneed wants his tribe and his children to be successful. There's not a better way to start by investing in reading and access to literacy materials at a young age. So again, Native American parents, caregivers, communities, they all recognize the importance of reading. So again, the focus on oral traditions, yes, very important, but certainly in the information age, especially as most things become digital, reading is critical. Libraries are often not recognized or significantly funded. So certainly I'm finding that there is a return investment variable. So if we want Native American children to be strong readers and of course make use of all of the other things that libraries have to offer, there must be investment. And what I am here to say is that I hear from at least the 6 tribes that all of them, for the most part, believe that reading and libraries are important for the future of their children. And so they are also saying that they want the tribal administration and leadership to make that a higher priority, which means more resources must be allocated to libraries and reading. And again, that's kind of what I've said there. Number 3, and I have to say too, and Leah and Sophia are probably tired of me grumping about it, but the overall, and actually I have grumped to IMLS about this, the overall complexity of applying for federal funding and managing federal funding is almost unacceptably brutal, right? It is so complicated. There's so many regulations. And I work for San Jose State University, so we have a very strong set of resources, and even we are struggling to keep up with all the paperwork. So I will have to say, I love IMLS. We love the opportunity, but I talked to their director recently, and he recognizes the fact that because of the complexity of federal funding, that oftentimes people, the very people that they want to get the funding to, don't even bother applying because it's too complicated. And so that's, and one of the reasons why I have so many students is because they are helping me negotiate the complex post-award, pre-award paperwork, as well as all of the other moving parts. And so I do believe universities, one ways they can help tribal communities is to offer partnerships and collaborations like we have with our 5 tribes, where we leverage our robust research resources to try to work together to kind of struggle through all of this grant paperwork. So libraries and universities in particular must help. We must leverage our resources to support other communities and offer our expertise to manage this very complicated process. So, and then building teams and communities. So as much as we want this to be rapid, it takes time, right? And so we have been, you know, this grant was written and accepted during the pandemic while it was raging. So certainly that slowed things down, but building teams and community takes a long time, but it's well worth its effort as we move forward. So, all right. So for the team, super fast because we're running out of time and we want to get the questions, but real quick, Margie, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Here's a brief list of the goals accomplished thus far in regards to the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. In relation to providing access to literacy materials, a technology table has been funded for the Kuala Boundary Public Library. As well, data collected from the monthly reading challenges shows an increase in reading at home. And with the placement of little free libraries throughout the community, there's been an increase in access to books. And then as you can see, the numbers at the bottom of this slide indicate that a total of 1,760 books have been disseminated so far by the Reading Nation Waterfall project.
Thank you, Margie. And also want to draw attention to the Vaughn and Shirong Wong Memorial Little Free Library. That's my parents and I have funded a memorial library on behalf of my aunt and uncle. And I just provide that as an example. Again, I think Little Free Libraries in particular provide a great opportunity to bring outside funding into the community in memorial of loved ones that have passed on. And so that's $3,000 a year, $30,000 over 10 years. In a great way to, again, honor their memory by putting it right in front of the Head Start of the Eastern Band. So, all right. So the Lumbee, we're going to move fast here. So Elisa.
Hello. So the goals accomplished for the Lumbee. There was funding for a makerspace in the public library that included supplies. 200 home library boxes have been given out, and as a result, that we've already seen month-to-month numbers in the reading log program increase. And we're happy to report that over 1,500 books have been read at home. And in addition, over 1,000 books have been distributed to the children in the community through our little free libraries. So the findings from the community-based surveys highlighted some of the things that the community would like. And those include increasing the number of books in the library collection that are written about or authored by Native Americans, and to see the library that is welcoming to community members of all ages and needs, encouraging literacy for lifelong learners. And finally, as Dr. Chow spoke about earlier, the community members would really like to see more Native American representation in the library staff. So building off those findings, our recommendations include cultural and historical based programming, microgrant programs that encourage cultural works, developing the library as a hub for a variety of activities that can offer free programming and other community services. And finally, creating plenty of space that includes quiet areas for people to read, study, and work. That's also something the community would like to see.
Thank you, Elisa. Appreciate that very
Yeah.
much. Let's see, of course, Lynette, we don't have a lot of time, Lynette, but if you want to talk real briefly about any thoughts about the impact on the Lumbee.
One of, I just lost my page. There you go. One of the things that I noticed is the more attention that was coming in to the tribe about the reading scores and about the interest for the reading for the children, the more activity we had from the outside, the more activity was aroused from within. So it's kind of like, you know, a challenge. So that was one of the major points that we have found. Community assessments provide unique perspectives because they're coming from the tribal individuals who have been there forever. And, you know, working from the outside in is a great thing to accomplish. But if you don't understand the individuals and where their emphasis and value lies, sometimes you're not offering the correct thing. So you need to listen. Libraries increase their community advocacy by increasing their community partners, and we have found that to be true. The more partners that we interact with and partner with, the more we're spreading our message all across the community, and the more interest is being encouraged from without, and it just spreads like wildfire. So the interest is stronger and stronger, and we keep getting more opportunities and offers to put reading spaces in places everywhere, which only enhances the opportunity for reading for the children. And when you've got the tribal government on board, you've got the local businesses, and you've got everybody within the family, the elders, the siblings, they're all encouraging and helping with reading in different facets. Well, then you will create a literary ecosystem that will make education a fun thing that will be accomplished a lot more easily with great readers.
Thank you, Lynette. And I wanted to point out her cute grandson at the bottom here, where he brought me a book and insisted that I read it to him immediately. So again, just an example of how you put a book into a child's hand. They of course want to interact with us and have us read it to them. So I apologize. We're running quickly out of time. Leah, do you? Well, actually, Manisha, how can we go over a few minutes? Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
This is so fascinating. Please.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So go ahead, Leah.
Okay, so you all have the slides so you can read more about this later, but main points are that the community survey results showed that there's an interest in up-to-date materials, technology, culturally relevant books, services, and programming, children's story times, and more opportunity hours, which are out of school and out of work. And so we've shared with them a tech table and tablets that they have received that they're going to set up. They are just going to start a reading challenge for the summer. And yeah, we're working with them on that storytelling initiative that the Wooden Lakes librarian is going to start up with the Head Start again. And that's going to bring people in for oral storytelling and field trips for the kids to come each week and learn more about their culture and interact with their elders. There's also another grant that Dr. Chow is running, and it's called Seeking Immortality, and it's to digitally preserve Northern Cheyenne artifacts, culture, language, and history with the tribal governments.
Thank you, Leah. All right, Casina.
Yeah, so the KOA, they're also known as the Santo Domingo Pueblo. Their community assessment needs are still being analyzed, but the Little Free Library at the Santo Domingo Pueblo Community Center just distributed 150 books, and the Head Start there has also distributed 150 books as well. We have also recently started a partnership with the Kiwanis Club, Read to Me, and the Indigenous Library, which should hopefully provide more programming and literacy, especially a literacy event for infants later this month. And there was also talk about doing a large book sharing event at the Pueblo's train stop.
Thank you, Kashina. And yeah, we're very excited about that partnership. So that's one of the two remaining that haven't finalized their funding in terms of being able to access it. But one of the things that has happened is certainly, as you see, some books are still being donated and given away. And the Kiwanis Club has embraced, along with the Public Library of Albuquerque, all 3 Little Free Library boxes. And they actually have already purchased 3 reading benches for each of the 3 Little Free Libraries. The donations from the Albuquerque Public Library will also greatly increase the book ecosystem and also represents hopefully something that's sustainable way beyond the life of our respected projects. So, all right, then finally the Yurok. So they're the latest tribe to join. So the Crow was the original founding partner, but unfortunately, because of the change of principle and also because of some of the challenges of the paperwork, they decided to withdraw. So the Yurok, which is in the beautiful Northern California area, Redwood, and actually located, or actually the Redwood National Forest National Park is located on Yurok land, and it's right there on the Oregon border. So again, these presentations, so we're honored to be presenting here, Manisha, but actually I've got to meet the Del Norte Public Library Director at the California Library Association, who then generously agreed to sponsor and adopt all 3 Little Free Libraries for the Yurok tribe. And she had been wanting to find a way to partner with the Yurok tribe. That's one of the reasons why I love Little Free Library boxes. It somehow serves as a way for the community to engage on a specific collaborative project. And so we're really delighted about that. So the Little Free Library boxes are being ordered or have just been ordered, and they are going to be placed on all 3 the school library, the Head Start, and also the Boys and Girls Club, because they don't have a public library. We do believe, because of this project, however, they may start to create a public library, and now understanding, and I think this goes back to one of the original questions. So where we are now is that libraries and education, for the most part, is not focused on trying to colonialize or to push onto children what others think. Now, I'm not saying that that's not still happening, but I'm saying that certainly for libraries and education in general, for the most part, that is not the focus anymore. And so certainly libraries in particular, I think, can play a role that maybe was not as positive as that was in the past now, where we can offer really public funding to provide resources for all children, but in particular tribal communities, indigenous children. And so I think that this is one of the examples of that, where as a librarian, she has dedicated herself to her small county, which largely is indigenous in Yurok, along with a few other tribes. And so we're really excited about that. The tablets, by the way, are another way to provide, I think, a preface to where the libraries are going, more digital technology. And certainly we believe technology also brings in families and children that otherwise may not necessarily be strong readers or love to read. And of course, we call it unlibrarying the library, get them into the library in any way we can, so that we can show them all the things libraries can do for them. So all right. So with that being said, and I have to share this great picture that I had to hike to. This is the opening of or the end of the Klamath River as it's opening up into the Pacific Ocean. And also give a shout out to Yurok, because they are working on 2 incredibly important environmental projects that really are benefiting mankind. One is the saving of the California condor, which they have successfully done. And the other is that they're bringing down 4 dams, the 4 dams that have been, on the Klamath River. They're all coming down due to a 20-year lawsuit that they've been fighting against the federal government, which should save the salmon because of their efforts. So good on the UROC, and they deserve all the credit for their steadfast advocacy on behalf of us all. So, all right. So that being said, a couple of questions, and again, of course, feel free to leave. And I apologize for going over. Obviously, really good questions. It's a question for what is planned to help the tribe's success with increased access to literacy after the 3-year grant period ends. So yes, great question. And so certainly sustainability is one of the primary outcomes of our project. And so our belief is that by setting up, we call it a mesh network, but by setting up that network, the 3 legs of the stool, well, every community has a school library, hopefully. Every community has usually has a Head Start or pre-K early literacy education program. And every library every community typically has a library or tribal library. So really, I think the hope is that by bringing those 3 together, including the national organizations of Little Free Library, that that ecosystem will continue, right? So again, the idea of the waterfall is that waterfall will continue to get bigger and bigger. One thing we didn't mention is that we also have set up, and if you would, Sophia or Tiffany drop the link to the website into the chat. We have set up Amazon wish list so that people anywhere in the world can donate books to any of the tribes. And those books will go, Amazon, whether you love them or hate them, they're extremely efficient. So if you buy a book from Amazon, that book's going to be delivered to the tribe within a few days. And then that book will end up in the Little Free Library for a child within a few days after that. So anyway, so that's kind of our goal there. And I think Reading Nation Waterfall could continue either as a larger grant, right, another grant, or it could spin off as a nonprofit as well. So there's a lot of potential things that we can do with that. Question 5, how has this program impacted children's literacy? So I'll just include what we don't know right now. We have our initial assessments this coming fall, but I am proud to say that we have distributed 5,300 plus books. And it's my belief that outside of the numbers, and certainly, reading assessments can be biased, I do think we've impacted literacy for some children in these communities in a positive way. So even if it's 1 book or 10 books or 20 books, if we were able to put a book in the hands of a child that otherwise they didn't have, it's a win for literacy, and hopefully a win for that child and their caregivers as well. So, but I guarantee you, if we're invited back next year, we'll have more data on tangible impact on literacy, both at the kindergarten and also the 4th grade level. So, okay. So with that being said, we more than welcome to entertain additional questions. I do see that there is a request for creating a book writing program for children. And let's see. Leslie, are you still here? Leslie here?
Yes, I am.
Great. So that might be a question that Leslie might be able to help us with. I don't have an answer, but Leah and Sophia, let's jot that down as a question that we might want to add to our resources as far as, resources for writing a children's book, as hopefully some of that gets started in our project. So. And Leslie, I don't know if you have any resources or guides possibly that.
Yeah, actually, I've already provided that for you.
Did you? Okay. Well, there we go. All right. There we go. Okay. Cyber families. So let's include that in our resources. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Yes, and we do want to partner with Dolly Parton's initiative. We have reached out on several occasions with no response. So Leslie, if you have any connections, we would absolutely want to do that. So
Your best bet is with the Library of Congress Literacy Awards, because she won it couple years ago. So connecting with members of that, I finished my time with them. But if you actually connect with some of the advisory folks, that would be a good idea.
Okay, great. Thank you.